and welcome to episode 24 of All the Horrible Things T-Virus Edition? G-Virus Edition? What do you think?
It's a virus, all right. There is a virus.
Yes, we are
here.
talking Resident Evil, baby. Recently released on Netflix, I believe last week. And I gotta be honest, I binged it in a day and a half. I watched all but one episode the first day, and then the finale, which happens to be the crappiest of the episodes, well, tied with episode 5, the following day. And I didn't hate it like it's getting the hate all across the internet. I didn't hate it.
Yeah,
how about you?
I've been avoiding how people are receiving it. I haven't Googled it at all. I don't know if I was just trying to go off of my gut. Do I like this? I'm not trying to be influenced by anyone else. I think there are some really fun characters in here. I think overall, I didn't hate it either, but I don't think it was the Resident Evil story I wanted.
No, and I don't necessarily feel like it did fan service at all. I didn't read any reviews prior, but afterwards it kind of did get my brain to reassess what I had seen, and I viewed it. I don't like to be swayed too much, but one person made a really good point saying, who do they think Resident Evil fans are? Like young teenage girls? These are our two main characters, Jade and Billy, is who we're following for half of the show. Granted, they're younger versions, and we do see them older in 2036 as well, the other thread running through the show. But I do feel like it did come off a little YAL, and that's the opposite of what Resident Evil should be doing. It's not young adult literature here. It's this should be close to rated NC-17 in my view. Resident Evil should be an extremely brutal show, which it had moments, but
they had to have gotten some sort of, studio push that we want them to be young. Because I completely agree with what you just said, that it does feel like it's young adult. It was not made for the video game fans or the Paul W.S. Anderson fans for that matter, but it was made for
fans.
Say that again?
He has fans?
Yeah, exactly.
P.W. Anderson has fans, eh? Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
There's got to be some people out there, otherwise why are they giving this guy money to make anything?
He does, yeah,
but
good job.
Here is where I think the direction was coming in, was from the Netflix execs, because their numbers have to be young adult. Even shows like Cobra Kai, they're focusing on kids in high school. And I think that's probably what the writers were forced to create.
You're right. It was, we got this entity now. We own the rights to Resident Evil. What's our number one? Stranger Things. Can you please infuse Stranger Things into Resident Evil for us? And it didn't really work, although I did like the 2036 stuff as a whole more. But when we are talking about the 2022 stuff, I love Lance Reddick.
Same here.
Their father. So the head of Umbrella Corporation,
Albert Wesker,
was great. He's always good. If you're a fan at all of him, I highly suggest going and watching his clip from Eric Andre's show, because it's phenomenal. He's very good at self-deprecating. Let's put it that way.
So here's the argument right off the bat then. Because we're fans of Stranger Things, why didn't this work then? Because I didn't have a problem with them being about two young girls. I thought they were fun characters, but where did it go wrong?
I feel like Jade's character was a bigger problem for me than Billy's, in that she made so many stupid decisions throughout the entirety of the series, including when she was older too.
Yeah.
I struggled with, I believe their bond as actresses, as sisters in the show. I actually was on board with their connection and bought into that. I just really struggled with some of the decisions that Jade made. For example, when she essentially goes and hits the bully girl on the head with a rock in the bathroom, wearing the raccoon mask, right? Their mascot of the high school's mask, and then essentially framing her sister for it, who she's trying to help, but then puts that head in her sister's locker, so then she has to deal with potentially getting expelled or suspended. I know she's trying to make her seem tougher and that she's willing to stand up for herself and stuff, but in the moment I was like, why would she
just framed your sister?
Her sister's livelihood. Yeah, her decisions throughout the whole show drove me crazy. And as many mistakes as they make in Stranger Things, these kids, they're not as blatantly just like foolish, you know?
Right.
I think that has something to do with it. The characters' decisions were less viable in Resident Evil Netflix edition. But I liked Billy. I liked Billy as an actress, and even the older Billy, I didn't mind. She was a little big, a little theatrical.
I agree.
I thought Billy is a more interesting character because she kind of goes from one side to the other after having been bit, of course. And I don't know. What did you like about this first episode, the premiere? What worked for you in our premiere here?
Okay, so I was pretty into like how they opened up the story following adult Jade. You know, it kind of felt like they were trying to capture that feeling of, you know, like a zombie movie, post-apocalyptic, doing research out in the field.
A Mad Max vibe, Fury Road-ish. You know what I mean? I enjoyed the ambiance was cool. The scenery was cool. Settings pretty good throughout the whole series.
Yeah. Plus, it had a bit of like a 28 Days Later type of a feeling. You know, being out there by yourself, but it went wrong with that giant worm. Like it almost ruined this setup for me. And I think, you know, I didn't dislike, as I know those are the things that happen in this world. I don't know if it was maybe too soon, because we had already had like the suspense of just, you know, setting off the zombie horde.
Right. And I liked that the zombies seemed initially to be slow walkers, but then they do start run. At first I was like, oh my God, we got Night of the Living Dead, kind of, this is going to be snoozy. Even like Walking Dead, those are all kind of snoozy zombies. But they did activate. They did get their 28 days later on. And I liked her system with the fire.
That was
cool. I did think it was interesting that she was studying them. There's always a scientific element to these Resident Evils, which I appreciate. It's not just a world of zombies. You have these minds that are trying to understand what it does biologically.
Yeah, they haven't given up. They just haven't given up yet. And
so you didn't like the worm, though. Why?
You know what? Maybe it felt too video game for me.
Was it too CGI'd?
Oh,
it didn't look legit.
Yeah. I mean, the bright colors on it.
Was it a worm, or I thought it was a caterpillar? Is it not a caterpillar?
You might be right. I mean, it wasn't.
Because then imagine what that becomes.
Yeah.
If it becomes
a Mothra,
that beautiful
giant
zombie butterfly. Yeah, Mothra, exactly.
Yeah.
That didn't actually bother me. Okay. I actually was like, okay, finally something a little unique. You know, I wasn't too put off by that, to be honest with you. But then when the mercenaries take her away and they seem like they're cool at first, and then they're like, no, we're going to sell you. It just seemed like such a flip of the switch for what you expected from them that it wasn't like a good twist. It would just seemed annoying to me.
Agreed.
But it did bring in my favorite character of the entire series, and that's Richard Baxter.
Yes.
Who's our actor's name for this guy? This very over-the-top dude who loves to say cool. Turlo Convery. He has a great presence, and what he ends up doing later in the series is you don't see it coming.
No, you do not.
I wanted him to be in the entire show.
I wanted him.
Get that though,
and we have a little bit of that, and we'll talk about it more. I wanted him to switch teams. You know, they seem like they're working together, but ultimately, like he still works for Umbrella.
Right.
Going back really quick though, these mercenaries or Mad Max type characters who live out in the, you know, beyond civilization, I feel like they burned that really quick. Like they established who these people are. It was a really cool element, and then we're like, but we're not gonna go there.
Right. And it was rich content that was squandered.
Yes.
Too quick.
Yes.
I'm with you on that. Yeah. Actually, yeah, let's get back to then when she is sold out by these mercenaries. One of the other things that really irritated me about Jade right off the bat is when she does then just jump off of that huge high structure.
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed pretty suicidal into the zeros being our zombies. It just immediately set the stage for Jade makes really, really dumb decisions.
Yeah.
That's all I got from this entire show is that she keeps doing the wrong thing. Granted, she's able to survive because that other dude comes in with the car, which she's able to then.
Right. Which to jump off of what you were just saying, yeah, we're almost going against what this character, what we've established is that she's an educated scientist, should be making the calculated decisions that make sense, but going off of her gut, like her child version of herself, which we learn that she hasn't grown, that she still reacts out of, I don't know if it's fear or whatever it is, but it's ultimately the wrong decision.
Right. And it was one of those things where like, okay, she's escaping them now, but she will inevitably be caught by them. When we have 8 episodes, you kind of just saw what was going to happen with her character in the future. I felt like I didn't feel like I was surprised too much by the storyline as a whole, really. There weren't a lot of moments that was like, well, with the exception toward the end, we'll talk about one Shaka.
Yeah.
Who, let's talk about her other big villain. We are introduced to her in the first episode, right? Or is it the second episode that we're introduced to her?
Are you talking about Evelyn Marcus?
Evelyn Marcus. Essentially the CEO of Umbrella, right? Ultimately, their father is in charge of the science division or whatever. He's in charge of what's going on in New Raccoon City in, I think it's South Africa?
It's South Africa.
Is that where it's located?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we learn...
Which is cool. I really loved their neighborhood. The use of color in this first episode really got me. I loved it. Yes. I loved the music in the first one, too. I thought they did a really good job. Of all the peripheral stuff, the production stuff, it's just scripts.
Right.
Scripts were problematic and characterizations were kind of silly too. But yeah, back to Evelyn. What was your take on her when we get introduced to essentially Lance Riddick's boss?
Well, I thought she, at least from the start here, was a cool character, and I like the actor. I've seen her in The Purge. I thought her performance was great. I thought her style. I mean, there's clearly a class thing going on here where she is not just in charge, but she walks and talks like the boss should.
Right. And I did think she had an interesting backstory with her grandfather having been the founder of Umbrella Academy.
Yes.
And then what happened with her parents? Why did that then skip a generation? Because I know he had lost the business in some sort of controversy, but it wasn't the OG Raccoon City problem, or was it? Were they insinuating that New Raccoon City exists now because her grandfather had bungled Raccoon City?
That's what I got out of it. It's like, yes, and
but
go ahead.
They never mentioned Raccoon City. They talk about the Tijuana incident instead, which is another city where they had headquarters. And
they're talking about
there was a zombie outbreak there, is what you were to take.
Yes, that had happened recently. That's from what I got out of it, because they do then talk about the original Raccoon City eventually and how they just nuked it instead of what really happened with the outbreak. But you're right. I think it was a little bit confusing as to what happened with her.
What happened
relatives.
with the grandpappy? Does he show up later, the grandpappy, in a different mutated form? Is he the guy that's in the big tube? I'm not sure.
It's a good question.
I was thinking that might have been her grandpappy in stasis or whatever until the escape. But yeah, I will say in the first episode, I loved the Doberman stuff too. Even though it was really silly for these two girls to be breaking into their dad's workplace to release the animals because, PETA, and that's fine. Believe what you want to believe, but I'm not thinking it's good to set up your own father to lose his job. It was, again, the motivation behind doing this that seemed, good, but the process in which it was done, dumb.
problematic for sure.
Yes.
Again, making poor decisions, not caring about your own family members is a big character flaw. Big character flaw.
And Jade was really awful to her dad in
So
the first
mean.
few episodes.
So mean.
It's just like F you left and right to the dad. It just seemed too much almost. It's one, I don't know. He took a licking, let's put it that way. And this is in the first episode. We don't know the kind of power that he does have. And episode 2 is really where we see that, where he comes into the school to defend his daughter,
right, who
has, been set up by his other daughter as being this essentially
bully.
What would you call it? The aggressor,
Yeah.
She battered this girl who had been bullying her. Granted, that bully deserved it to a degree. She hit with that burrito in the face thing.
What a waste of food.
That was pretty cruel. And I said that burrito. That's exactly
the
what
poor
went through my mind.
burrito.
But the scene with her dad, with the principal, exerting his power and his influence over the whole town, essentially insinuating, listen, let's move forward with this. And then not only are you going to lose your job, but I'm going to blacklist you. I thought was a really subtle, good scene.
I agree. We learn a lot about his character right then. We learn like exactly how important he is to Umbrella. That no one else can do his job. I enjoyed that as well. It was maybe kind of a dirty way to save your daughter. Like, I'm going to get you fired if you don't. But we learn a lot in that scene.
Yeah, it was a complete contrast to what we'd seen of his character prior.
Yes.
Which I did appreciate. That did surprise me because I was, rooting for him, and now he certainly became questionable.
Right.
But I didn't want to actually skip over the Doberman, because the Doberman's such a staple of the Resident Evil series.
Correct.
Having rewatched the 2002 version and then watched the Stars version 2021, they both have Dobermans. There's a few of these elements from the Resident Evil series that will always make it in. And these rabid Doberman are what I associate the most with Resident Evil, I would say. Having played that first one for PlayStation, that's where you're going through the mansion, right? And the dogs were the scariest bit to me. Those Dobermans were the best bit. You mentioned that you do play the game yourself. What do you remember from your youth in those games?
Well, certainly the dogs. I mean, very, very terrifying. They incorporated them into the additional other films that we haven't really gotten into either. You mentioned the first one, but yeah, they make their way throughout the entire series. They have weaponized Dobermans, which already get a bad rap, like the pit bull.
Right.
But yeah, they've not just infected them, but they've weaponized them, and it seems like a very scary thing that an evil corporation would do.
I agree. And actually, you bring me to the point that I want to defend Resident Evil. Umbrella Corporation itself is a really interesting entity. What it's doing with ultimately making these viral weapons. You see it elsewhere sometimes, but I feel like Umbrella Corp is really, it's like, now Amazon, I guess, is going into pharmaceuticals and stuff. I feel like 30 years from now, what Amazon could become with controlling us. I think Umbrella Academy's motives and how they're operating resonates, especially even more now than when it first came out. When Resident Evil was released late 90s, right, for the PlayStation 1?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
I almost think like the IP has become more relevant and more usable than it initially was. So I'm on board with Umbrella Corporation.
Great villainous
Umbrella Academy.
Yeah. Which we could tie in because of Tom Hopper in the most recent.
Yes, that's right.
The Raccoon
2021
City.
Stars version.
Actually had a theatrical release, just did very pourly.
I saw that. I was shocked because I don't remember seeing a single commercial for it. I do remember there, like a couple of years ago, hearing there was a bunch of Resident Evil stuff in production. And I think I was just confused. I thought there was also a cartoon in the works too.
No, that's
Am I crazy?
I believe that's on Netflix already.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I'm going to have to investigate that then. But this is the one that obviously had the biggest PR push. I don't know if you've seen in Times Square, but they have a very, very cool 3D marquee with the liquor crawling out of the screen and being like this 3D hologram on top of it. It's very awesome. And when we'll get to the Lickers, because next to the dogs, to me, this is what sold it in terms of horror. Is there anything else you want to talk about episode 2? Because it's a really heavy expo episode.
I think the only other thing is we start to learn who the Simon character is, because I think he's established as the computer hacker. And I don't know if that's 2 or 3, but
that's right.
Simon, the love interest, Jade's first love interest,
right,
is introduced as this. We don't know that his mother is, but we know that he's the kid who can hack into Umbrella's computer system.
Yes, exactly right. And episode 2, I think, deals with a lot of like the dynamics between the sisters, the Billy being jealous that, oh wow, now Jade does have someone beyond her,
right?
And there's a lot of just Billy coming into her own as a zombie, half zombie, or a human zombie hybrid sort of thing.
Correct.
How did you like the scene with her when she's like, all right, I'm gonna do this skateboarding trick too?
I thought that was weird. I mean, I it seems. I mean, we had to see a party scene, right? We had to see what these kids do. I was not expecting it to be. It wasn't in a house. It was out in this weird area that hasn't been developed yet. They've got this really cool skateboard
like construction
ramp. And they're not really skating. They're just launching themselves. I don't know. I don't know why they were doing it, to be honest with you. Seemed weird.
Right. And this actually sets up, we then meet in person the guy who had been researching the Tijuana incident, which I feel like is such a throwaway subplot.
Completely agree.
On, right? It seemed like he could have been a very interesting character, but I mean, he gets killed in the next episode, right?
Yeah,
by the father. What's the dad's name? I keep calling him Lance Reddick, but
Albert Wesker.
Albert Wesker, thank you. Yes, the multiple Weskers.
Correct.
Which is a name that is used throughout series as well. Wesker's definitely in the 2021 version.
Yeah, Tom Hopper, who we just mentioned, plays
Do you remember
Albert.
Who are the names of the original characters in the original game? I know Jill Valentine is.
Yeah,
right?
and Chris Redfield. Chris Redfield has a sister, and we also have Leon, who in the 2021 version did not do him any justice. He's a cool character that they kind of used as like the joke.
Right. A rookie. He was the rookie guy.
Yeah,
right?
He was the rookie.
Yeah, we'll talk about that one after this one.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's bust on then. So 2 was a lot of expo, a lot of the just dynamics of the relationships being built out. 3, we get possibly the best episode of the series, from my perspective.
Agreed.
At least in terms of effects and action sequences. What stood out to you from 3?
Well, I think it was this escape feeling of which felt very cinematic, like a fun action movie, escape from New York. You know, so many great movies have this scene, but it was the tunnel.
Yes,
because we knew we were in France with the Brotherhood, and the tunnel felt very Resident Evil. You know, we don't have very moments in this. There are very few moments of suspense. We mentioned it in the first episode, but this feels very Resident Evil. You're in the dark, the red lights here and there. That just the suspense moment of just leading up to what's in the dark.
Yes, and it had longer shots too to build that suspense, and like you mentioned, the dark played such a key part of it. And then, of course, this is where we're introduced to our Lickers. Do we see the Lickers again for the rest of the series? Because the Lickers are the coolest of all of our creatures, at least humanoid creatures in it. For those of you who are not familiar, the Lickers have these tongues, venom-esque, I guess you could say, venom-esque tongues.
Yeah, the face kind of opens.
It's like venom, or it's actually more like a carnage. Meets Demogorgon combo.
Yeah.
But they're cool. They're very cool, and in terms of you see them in the 2002, 220 or 2021, and now this one. I feel like these are the best ones we've seen. liquor wise.
Yeah, as far as technology goes, this may have been where the budget went.
I think so.
Yeah.
That was definitely busted, which made me surprised then that in the same episode, we get my favorite mutant creature, which is the spider. The spider I thought was pretty darn cool too, especially the way that it killed the father when he goes back to like essentially martyr himself.
Yeah.
To save his right. Even though the kid had already been bit, right? The kid was doomed.
Yes. What were they smuggling that they couldn't take the normal?
I think they were smuggling the kid who was bit.
Okay. Yeah.
Wasn't like that the big thing? They said it was hooch.
Oh, wait.
They had hooch on them.
Yes.
They had some booze on them. But
That's
really what they were worried about is they'd noticed that their kid had been bitten.
Right.
And then they wouldn't be able
That's
to.
it. I couldn't remember that they had this alcohol that, it's become rare, right?
They had the hooch. But then again, okay, these are characters that could have been fleshed out a little more and, are thrown to the wayside pretty quick. They're just like, these are those are the kind of characters that make it feel more like a procedural. Like, okay, this is the standalone episode where it takes away from the effect of a whole series to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
They seem like they were going to have more worth than they did, and then they just get slaughtered so quick. And I mean, it is supposed to make Jade be our hero, but she's not able to save people. She's a bungler.
Yeah.
She bungles.
She's not like the Alice character, who is like, oh, you've been programmed to be strong and badass. I think that's kind of what this series was missing overall. I think we learn that Albert Wesker says that he had made Billy the strong one.
Right.
But we don't even see that, really.
We don't see that happen. I think you make a really good point. We don't know who to root for in this too much. I mean, at first, it felt like I was going to be rooting for Albert Wesker.
100%.
I will say in the latter half, we do get Bert, which is his clone, is one of his fellow clones. Well, I can't wait to talk about that.
I know. Same here.
In a second. Like Blade makes an appearance. But let's talk about episode. Let's talk about episode 4.
Yes.
Which is really Brotherhood centric, right? And this is when we meet the mother zombie as well, who has this amazing FX gland in her throat.
Yeah.
Where she's able to actually communicate to the other zombies. This is an element that I liked.
Yes.
It's not something you see because in the first episode, it's established that Jade is studying these zeros, like the first gen of zeros, to see if they are evolving, to see if it's possible for them to have a leader. We don't actually get that realized until episode 4, where you got this real granny looking zombie who's just pulsing through the neck, able to control the others.
Right. And this should have been our A storyline throughout that gets pushed down a ton. Her driving purpose, we think is supposed to be about her family, but really, like, we start off, we learn that she's trying to study them. Did she call her like the mother or like grandmother?
I think she was called the mother
of the zeros. And we learn that the Brotherhood, who has kind of been worshiping them, have don't even know what they have there with her, and they've got her locked up. But this should have been the thing driving the story more. And I feel like it gets...
agree. That is a unique take on zombieism. I guess you kind of see it in when there was something released, Army of Zombies. What was that one? The Army one last year,
where
Zack Snyder
did,
have kind of leaders.
Army of the Dead.
And then there's like Army of the Dead, and then you got actually Zombie Love cooking in that one too. But I think you're right. I think they missed a big opportunity by not following Zombie Order more in their own sort of like structure and hierarchy.
I'm not gonna fault them for focusing on family, but I really feel like if we're going after a Resident Evil show, we need to get more about the zeros and less about just family dynamic.
Yeah, none of the games really deal with family at all, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Although, are they brother and sister, Jill Valentine?
No, Chris and Claire Redfield are brother and sister.
Ah, okay, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, Jill's supposed to just kind of be like the badass.
Fair. So in episode 4, takes place mostly in the Brotherhood, right? This is where we do meet the mother, and we lose our favorite character.
Yeah. We find out
hilarious, and he says "cool" every other word.
Cool.
The way he's delivered his "cool" it was so refreshing. I thought he was the best written character of everyone.
Not only do we find out that he's this badass, but he has the funniest, darkest sense of humor. That he's our comic relief until we meet Bert. Yeah. But he almost felt the most mysterious in the best way. Like, I want to know more about this character. He could have his own series.
His little dogs.
Yeah. You think he's talking about his children. He's got pictures of his dogs, and he just is. It makes sense why Umbrella hired this guy to go in and do the dirty work, and he's probably my favorite character.
I agree.
That doesn't even make it. Like I really felt like he should have been.
He doesn't even have that good of a death either. No. That's what makes it so bad. Is like she's able to jump and climb up this ladder that he can't reach because he's too stout.
Yeah,
and
he's also fighting him off. He lets her escape. Really, like he did all the dirty work.
Exactly. I mean, I guess you could claim that as redemption for him, but at the same time, it just was so lackluster for the character that was really the most entertaining. I was bummed.
Yeah, like what I was saying earlier, I really feel like it would have been really interesting if he had flipped teams, realized that there's another group that's doing good, and then if we're going to kill him off, it could have been his salvation moment could have been in the last episode.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Especially when then our big bads becomes Billy in the future, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard to root against Billy because of what she's been through, sort of thing.
We spent so much time learning and liking her for her to be. Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, in a way, at the end, I'm rooting more for Billy than Jade.
Yeah,
because of all the stupid decisions Jade made along the way.
Yeah.
Let's jump to episode 5, which to me ties for my least favorite episode. This is where the girls are essentially on their treasure hunt in the house. The one upside to this is that it is paying homage to how the game works, right? There's a lot of, you got to find stuff in the game to move on, to move forward. I appreciated that, most specifically the piano, because I think that is a bit that comes into a few of the games.
It is.
Play the right tune on a piano. Right.
I remember that.
I didn't mind that it was tapping into that, but I just found it so tedious.
Oh man,
it's one thing to play a game and to search for stuff, but to watch characters do that, and we didn't care. I didn't care.
Yeah, it felt more like National Treasure, like a boring National Treasure movie. The cool thing in the game is that it's in this mansion. We are in a duplex where you have to wonder how long they haven't been living there that long for Albert to have been. The kids are asleep.
Yeah, it's no character to this place.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. What?
No, it just felt weird. Was he doing this at night when they're sleeping? He's setting up all these not even that. There's little clues behind picture frames, and then you jump to the piano thing, which is very elaborate, which makes sense in an old mansion, doesn't make sense in this condo or whatever it is.
No, the only bit I kind of liked was having the little chip to open the secret passage being the dog.
On the dog, yeah.
I didn't mind that. No. I didn't mind that so much. That was kind of fun.
No, but how we
during
got
this whole treasure hunt, we got Simon kind of leading them through it and telling them, crouch down because there is cameras in the microwave and there's cameras in the fridge. It was just so silly.
Yeah.
It just was not a fun episode. It was the first time I started to wonder whether or not it was a good show. Up to then, I was like, I'm enjoying this.
Okay.
And I think in episode 5, I was like, maybe this is crappier than I realized. And yeah, of course, Simon just talking to them over the phone. Isn't it your favorite thing in a film or a TV series to watch people talk to one another on, FaceTime?
Yeah.
It just drives me nuts when that's going on. And then to go out of your way to mute him, to put the phone over there and to talk with her privately, then unmute him. Yeah. It was just ridiculous. It was a waste of time. Well, it gets a little more interesting in 6, even though I would say as a whole, I don't know how much I loved the editing from the past to the present. sometimes I found it could be a little confusing about what was going on.
I agree. I completely agree.
I felt like toward the end of the series, it got more confusing, more fragmented, where you didn't really understand what was going on when. And even though it was in the future, sometimes I felt like they were showing you stuff in the future that happened prior to other stuff you'd seen in the future, which just really convoluted the timeline for me as a whole.
Correct.
Episode 6, I really feel like is where that started to get annoying for me. This is where we pop onto the boat. She has been saved. We learned, well, we knew she had a husband, but we kind of get to know her husband a little bit more. Yeah, and her daughter, B. Isn't her daughter's name B?
Yes.
Is it B? It's B. Okay. And just, I mean, ultimately, it's emphasizing how much she cares more about her job than her family, is what I'm seeing prevail in this episode, which doesn't make Jade more likable at all.
Right.
You know?
No.
When you're struggling with her.
My biggest problem was that he is not the biological father, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he treats the daughter like she should be, and when the mom's always gone. He's basically raised her. He's got her in piano lessons, and she kind of rubs it in that there's in a moment where she's like, we learn that he's not the real father. Like, I felt a little bit weird about that.
That is weird because we don't actually know who the father is, and it wasn't Simon, obviously.
No, it wasn't.
Right.
Why don't we know who the father is?
Left up in the air. I guess maybe a season 2 thing,
or
potentially.
Was she grown in a lab just like herself and her sister?
Oh, okay. That'd be more interesting.
Well, the reason I say that is because, not to jump too far ahead, but in the last episode, Billy kind of says, what did you do? What did you do to your daughter? Did you like enhance her type of a thing? There's a moment there where she alludes to the fact like she could have been grown in a lab too, which makes her no different than her own father, who she's been rebelling against her entire life.
So she's a huge hypocrite and she makes terrible decisions.
Yes.
Not likable. Not huge on Jade. This is the episode where she makes the biggest blunder, right? Bringing the zombie onto the boat so she could do her tests with her sense. Because ultimately her and Amrita, her fellow science lady, figure out how to essentially make 2 different sprays, one that attracts and one that repels zombies. And then she has to test it. I did like when she had to pull the zombie up from the water, where essentially they have these zombies in the ocean.
Yeah.
Were they tethered to the boat? What was going on?
They may have been a defense, like a deterrent. Yes.
A defense deterrent. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting, but again, she's reckless. She's a reckless character, Jade.
Yeah.
And clearly cares more about the biology side of things than her actual chilling.
Why wouldn't you test this on land instead of your...
Exactly. She has no patience at all.
Is it called
which drove me crazy.
The university? Is that what they call the ship?
I think so.
Yeah, because that's what they're trying to save the arts and like history of humanity. Yeah, exactly. Again, another major reason why you don't do testing like that there.
Exactly. It drove me crazy. Okay, let's bump up to 7. So what's going on our what is it? It's a penultimate episode, right? 7, right before the end here. We get a lot more action with older Billy here, and we have more extra interaction between the older siblings ultimately. And we find out this weirdness where Evelyn is now under the control of Billy. Does this happen in 7? Is this where we see her?
I think you're right. It's the meeting where they didn't want, the only reason they wanted to meet with the people from the university, and they meet with the in the previous episode, they meet with the head, is just to give up Jade. So in episode 7, after she has had her friend killed pretty much, she has to go and meet with her sister now, or meet with Evelyn, right? Who, as you just said, is being controlled by an iPad.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with that Gerard Butler movie Gamer.
Oh yeah,
where he's like controlled by somebody else.
Yeah,
but ultimately we have, I mean, it was surreal and kind of fun to watch, but you have Evelyn suddenly break into a Dua Lipa song and dance to essentially illustrate to us that she is being controlled by Billy.
Yeah,
and we have really no context for how that all goes down. How does Billy take control?
Right, and my question:
how does she then?
my question there is that Evelyn also hasn't aged a day. So is she also a clone or something? And that's how she's able to control her? That's where my brain was going. Like, how is this possible?
Okay, that's interesting, because this is something that we kind of railroaded over, was the whole clone aspect.
Right.
And ultimately, unless I'm mistaken, didn't they talk about making clones and then they were able to speed up the aging process so that they then looked the age they wanted them to?
Correct.
So one would assume then they would be able to keep that age in a stasis if they're able to speed it up. Maybe they can manipulate it.
Right. And to add on to that, and I think we kind of missed it. I don't know which episode we learn about Bert.
Yes.
Bert and the Blade version you mentioned, who's just like
the Blade version's the real him, though. That's what's so funny.
Yeah,
that's the real Albert.
Yeah,
and he's literally in a long leather coat, wearing sunglasses with the Blade hair, the very boxed haircut,
the glasses.
They had to know what they were doing there, right?
Right. And to slip in another detail here that we also failed to mention was that when I think when the girls are doing their research, they find a videotape from old Raccoon City or a different lab where they hear their dad's voice, who just does not sound like the nice guy that we know.
Right. And I think it was a Tijuana incident, right?
Right. Well, we learned that is the real Albert Wesker. And they kind of like, they kind of like don't then come back to explain like, oh, that wasn't our dad. I mean, at least for the audience, we've put that together, but I don't know if they ever did. And I also love that he's got clones of himself. He names one Albert and he just calls the other one Bert.
The other one's Bert. And there's the other one, the one he shoots immediately. Right. There's 3 of them initially in that lab that are clones. Yes. And then you have the original come in. He shoots, I think it's Al, just the Al guy.
Al, Bert, and then Albert.
Don't even get to know him. Exactly.
And I don't know if that was for us, the audience, to be like, oh, Albert is the one who is our main one. Al and Bert are, the not fully developed ones, because you had just started off this thought with the aging process. So we learn that they age him up, which is why he then needs the blood of his daughters.
Yes. Right.
So
it got a little confusing. Like, unless we were paying close enough attention to be able to talk about it, I'm not sure a regular audience is going to really follow it in the way you'd want to follow something. Well, it was a little convoluted.
And I have one more thing to add on to that before we move on with my theory that perhaps Evelyn is a clone as well, is that her son, Simon, who she's so quick to, we'll talk about, not help out. We learned that Evelyn is married to a woman. And that Simon has 2 moms, which I thought was a really cool storyline. And we don't really focus too much on the other mother. I don't even know her character's name, who keeps making the same dinner. That perhaps means that Simon himself was also from a lab. Like, they're just creating people left and right.
I think that's a really good point. Maybe there's other Simons, and that's why she was willing to do what she does to him when he does get bitten by Billy. Which I found, she just had a little animalistic moment when she bites him, right?
Yes. Yeah.
But also, I guess maybe we've harbored resent. Her sister's got a boyfriend and she doesn't.
Absolutely. That's her animal instinct, is to remove him. But not to be too broad on the subject matter here, is maybe that's why Simon has 2 moms and there was no father. That's the same reason. That does make sense. The same reason Billy and Jade don't have a mother. These scientists just decided to create their own children. But perhaps Evelyn.
Now you got me thinking. What if then Evelyn is, like you said, a clone, but a female clone of her grandpa?
Could be, absolutely.
And what if Simon's actually a clone of the grandpa, just at the young age, because we never see the grandpa?
It would make sense, because Evelyn also tasks Bert with trying to bring back or do something with the person in the tank.
Right. So it's very possible that maybe Evelyn doesn't have parents and she just calls him grandpa when it's really just
Yes, part of him.
her progenitor. Yeah. I like that you brought up the whole dynamic between Evelyn and her wife, because ultimately she's keeping her drugged on joy. And
Yes.
joy is the drug in this we haven't even talked about.
You're right, we haven't.
Which causes the mutation, I guess. I mean, they've acknowledged the T virus does do what it does. It does zombify people, but they use a derivative of it or a portion of this T virus within this essentially antidepressant. And if you take 20,000 times the amount you're supposed to take is when it then turns you into a zombie, which I found really excessive. And it kind of like, to me, made Evelyn make sense when she's like, well, let's sell it. Nobody's going to take 20,000 pills.
Right.
I almost like understood her logic there.
Yeah.
But she is slipping these Mickeys, these joy pills, to her wife to just keep her sedate.
Yeah,
and other
pacified,
than just so she isn't questioned. Right. I didn't understand. I guess, yes, yeah, just to keep her from asking questions constantly. I wanted to believe that she was in love with her at first, but it seemed like she was just a tool of hers to make her seem more normal of something. Or, it didn't.
To complete that family look.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it was all for show. You're right. It was her beard. I definitely can see that. Let's talk about the equally shitty episode to episode 5, which was the finale.
Man,
in the finale, we've alluded to it a couple times. Big old ruckus where Billy ends up kind of like losing it for a second, bites Simon, and then without hesitation, Simon's mom Evelyn shoots him in the head. My favorite part of
this episode. Yeah.
Maybe, almost the whole series. It was one of the few surprising moments. When you look back in retrospect, maybe you're right. Maybe there are more Simons, which makes it.
Or it's just very easy to replace him, right?
Right.
I'll just make a new one.
Yes. She didn't actually have that kind of bond where it actually mattered. She's not human, right? In that moment, there's really no humanity in Evelyn.
Yeah, a mother could never do that. Or a real mother could never do that.
But then we kind of like spend most of the time in 2036 on the island then where they push the button. There's a lot of talk of whether or not they should push the button in episode 7. But in 8, they finally push the button.
Right.
Which releases the Kraken, or this ginormous alligator, which is very confusing how this thing got there. We do have a flashback scene where Amarita's suddenly still alive, the person that she was doing the science experiment with, who died when she let the zombie on the boat. Jade was responsible for Amarita's death.
Right.
We flash back to them then working on a little lizard together, who I'm assuming we're to believe is then that crocodile.
Right.
That's been altered.
Right.
It's unclear. It's unclear because you go from a really short, fragmented scene of them monkeying with a little lizard to then seeing this, 100 feet crocodile. How long was it?
Easy. And that it's sedated somehow? That it's just like whatever we have.
It does need to breathe air. That's what I was confused about too, is how is this thing that's submerged surviving, because it did have that little like cork in its brain thing. Maybe it was being fed oxygen via...
Or maybe it was dead. Maybe it was dead like the virus.
Oh, okay.
The same way the zombies are just floating in the ocean. But
that actually makes a lot of sense. Okay, so if you look at it, because it didn't really look like a zombie gator. You know what I mean?
No, we see its eyes open, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't...
There was nothing T-virusy about it from what I saw. It just looked like a ginormous alligator. And as someone who's deathly afraid of alligators, I was not afraid of this big old boy.
No, it was very Peter Pan, It was the croc. And it's... I don't know. I mean, clearly we're supposed to have been paid off by the first episode. We've got the giant caterpillar. Then we've got the spider. So we're told as an audience that, the animals can be enlarged.
Yes.
But they didn't explain it at all.
No.
and somehow they have control over it, right? Where it's just like, it's going straight to the land. It's going to wipe out Umbrella. Like it was programmed.
Guess, well, I will give it a little credit on that. I'm assuming it was just attracted to that scent, right? Isn't that why ultimately you have Jade throwing down the scent when Billy's trying to kind of like manipulate her? which attracts the zombie horde, which frankly is one of the better action sequences too, with the drones taking down the zombies that are just encircling Billy. I dug that, but I'm assuming the Croc was going toward that sense at first.
Right, which would then reinforce my just now made up theory that it was dead, right? So it's attracted to
that does make a lot of sense.
Fragrance or pheromone.
Right, the pheromones. What did you think about then? Ultimately, we find out that B is not going to be killed by the Croc. The Croc chases her down only to like snuggle up with her for half a second.
That would then also reinforce my other theory just created in this episode, that she was created in a lab as well.
Right.
To which
there's something going on with her blood that they want.
Yeah. To which Billy even says, how come the Croc didn't go after her? Seemed very friendly.
So explain to me, why are they so interested? Because they do want Jade's blood, right? Why? Because then she's willing to shoot Jade. Billy's willing to shoot Jade because whatever she needs is then in the daughter. So she'll just use the more malleable daughter.
Right. Yes, because Billy was saying, I'm just like Dad. I also need that blood.
Oh, gotcha.
But
okay, I see.
I guess she must learn real quick that we can just get it from your daughter. Because
I guess just because the monster didn't attack her.
Right. Earlier in the series, we learn that that Jade says, my daughter didn't make it. I mean, do you remember that when she tells Billy like, oh yeah, no, the pregnancy didn't like work out essentially.
Oh, right. Right. Yes.
So then at the end, she's learning, oh, you do have a daughter. That's why I think she's in that moment. Well, then I don't need you.
Exactly. Well, if you don't need her, why don't you shoot her in the head instead of in the stomach?
To set up.
So she can survive and be in season 2, which I don't want to happen. I'm cool with Billy coming back. Is Bert dead? Did Bert die? I want Bert back. Bert, like you said, was the comedic relief of the second half of the season.
Right. That's a great question. I'm almost forgetting everything in this moment. Where was Bert? I don't remember.
Actually, Bert drives off with them, right? So they escape.
Yep.
And Bert does take them off. So Bert lives. Bert becomes their new surrogate father, which is fine. But okay, that brings me to, what do we do with the season 2 if it does come back? Because we can't ignore the fact that it has been number 1, beating Stranger Things for a week now.
Which is insane.
Panned as it's been panned by critics. Granted, the critics don't matter when it comes to viewership.
Yeah, if the numbers are there, people like it.
I think it's inevitable that they'll have a season 2. I keep reading these articles saying, no way, no way. But I don't know how you become number 1 and not.
I'll agree with that. And I will also say I wouldn't mind a season 2 to help maybe get it back on track. I mean, a lot of times season 1 is not the best season of any series. It's just there to develop characters. Yeah. And if they do a season 2, we don't need the nonlinear jumping around storyline. I
wouldn't mind seeing more of just the world turning, though. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because we don't see any of it actually like getting out into the world, where it's in 2036. There's only 300 million regular humans left, and the rest of humanity has become 0.
So
I wouldn't mind seeing more of that spread occur.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how interesting that would be narratively, but I agree in terms of the story that's left now. I don't see anything beyond them following the 2036 versions of these girls.
Yeah. In my opinion, what I would do was, if season 2 were to happen, or when it does, focus on a brand new character and their moment in the world. And then you tie it in by bringing Billy in towards the end of the season, or you show,
that's a good call.
Because I don't think, well, they spent so much time on developing these characters just to kill them off. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I certainly can wait a year and a half before I'm going to think about this again.
Yeah.
But, was there anything you want to say about the series before we just quickly talk about how the previous incarnations worked or didn't work, and how they kind of stack up to this Netflix series?
Here's the thing I like to say is that they plucked certain things from the video games. We had already mentioned that it's not a fan service to the video games, but we got note of the original Raccoon City. So, I mean, it's at least it lives in this universe. I'm glad they didn't completely ignore it, because Albert Wesker is a completely like different type of a character. True. And I don't know. I personally would love to see the series get, you know, a little bit back to its roots with the video games. So
totally agree. 100% agree.
Yeah.
And that's why, so I watched this when it initially came out. I had not realized that in 2021, Stars released, I guess, in the theaters initially, then it ended up on Stars.
Correct, yeah.
Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City.
Yes.
2021 with some decent actors in this. I mean,
yeah, I loved the cast.
It has a pretty fun cast. Donald Logue, for example, he came out of nowhere. I was like, whoa.
So great.
And he's the only one in it killed by a licker. Their licker is fun to look at too. It's a little CGI'd.
Yeah.
But it has its own take. It's like the brain is exposed in this one.
Yeah.
I enjoyed the licker in Welcome to Raccoon City. But what works the most with Raccoon City is it really feels like the video game more than anything else.
Yes.
Welcome puts to us Raccoon in the mansion, which is really the heart of the game, I feel like.
Yes.
I always associate that mansion and the Dobermans with the game when we get a lot of that in the 2021 version. My beef with the 2021 version is that there's just way too many characters.
Yeah.
There is so much going on.
That's because Welcome to Raccoon City essentially is Resident Evil 1 and 2, the video games, smashed together. Yeah, I mean,
I don't think they needed to do that.
They didn't.
There was too many people to follow.
Yeah, it was. But it was it's the complete opposite of the series we just talked about. It was very fan servicing. It's, I mean, almost the same exact beats of the video games, you know, with the, you know, basically just the whole, well, here's my biggest thing. Yours was the too many characters. Mine was that they didn't use Raccoon City enough.
That's fair. Okay.
Because it really is a character. And I know they focused on the mansion, the police station and the parking garage, which are all straight out of the game. And here's the craziest thing, to tie this all back together. The director and writer of Welcome to Raccoon City is the same writer director of 47 Meters Down and 47 Meters Down Uncaged. Yes.
No kidding. That's interesting.
To tie things more into our podcast is that Claire Redfield, the actor who plays Claire Redfield, is the star of the movie Crawl, which we've talked about like in the last 2 podcasts.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't hate it. Like, I got through, but I did feel like it was a little just...
I think I was telling you,
as a whole.
Bit messy.
I like the effects. I really liked some of the effects, like especially at the end when you have Dr. Brecken. He takes the G virus himself, and the way the eyes keep popping out. The effects on him were really cool. And then the monster that he turns into at the very end sequence, even though a little CGI, it looked unique to me. It looked fun. It felt Resident Evil-y and like legitimately horror scary sort of stuff. I just wasn't invested in what happened to the characters, you know?
Yeah, and I think that is because it was just too much, you know, comboing both video games and adding all these characters in. There wasn't enough time. The runtime of this movie is way too short to really dive into all these characters and what's going on.
Yes. Yeah.
But
and can you explain to me, so you got Wesker in this one, who's played by the guy from Umbrella Academy.
Tom Hopper, yeah.
Right. So he was on his own mission. Can you explain that to me
I really
a little bit better? Yeah, I wasn't clear what was going on there. Because you do have a mid-credit scene then where it turns out to be alive when we thought he had died.
Right.
Some lady says, I'm Ada Wong. I wasn't really clear on what his subplot and submission was. I feel like there could have been some clarification in the film that wasn't there for me.
Yeah, agreed.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. What about the 2002 version? Because I sadly wasted money, saw this in the theater.
Yeah.
Mia Jovovich.
I think I did as well, because I'm a huge fan of hers. But I really think this movie, like other movies we've mentioned from the early 2000s, is a victim of bad technology. Just does not, especially when you're looking at a video game that was like, at the time, those graphics were really cool. We've come a long way. We've also come a long way with Hollywood magic, if you will. And it's not scary because of the over the top, it's almost like they're trying to like take the video game characters in, like the technology, into the movie, and it doesn't work.
I completely agree. Yeah, it felt like it was a sequence within a video game more than an actual film.
Right.
That being said, I don't mind Mia Jovovich. I mean, obviously, her best film by far is Fifth Element.
Fifth Element.
You know who I really like, and who's an actually outstanding actor in this, is our covert villain, played by James Purefoy in this.
Oh, yeah.
He was Marcus Aurelius in Rome.
In Rome, yep.
So probably his best role of all time. He was so great in that. I liked seeing him there. I liked kind of seeing him play second fiddle too, because I can't think of anything else where he wasn't like one of the leads. And I thought he played a good, at first it seems like him and Mia Jovovich are going to have that. His character's name is Spence, I guess. Going to have that romantic connection, but then she ends up liking the guy who was, the scientist instead at the end. It was superfluous romance going on in this 2002 version as well.
Yeah.
But there was Lickers. There was Dobermans. So they at least attempted a little bit of homage. But to have the computer be the big bad was a little silly to me, because I don't know, maybe I'm not as familiar with the games as you, but is that a big feature where the computer controls stuff? They're an AI that's nefarious?
In the first game, I believe there is.
Okay.
It's kind of like our narrator in a way. Okay. But it's been so long since I've played that first game that I remember at the time of this movie thinking that it was right out of the games, but going back, it's, you didn't need it.
No. I did like one moment that really doesn't seem to have anything to do with the games, when they're stuck in that hallway.
With the lasers?
And then there's the lasers. Yeah, Granted, I think, didn't Cube come out before this?
I believe
Cube
so, yeah.
does something very similar. But, you gotta love seeing a person get completely huge, like the one dude does.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that. I mean, it had my full attention during that hallway sequence when it was a struggle with most of the rest of it.
I think, it was just a victim of the times. Like a very ambitious time to adapt video games. Like you can't, I don't know. You really have to be able to make it better than the game. And if your graphics aren't there, yeah.
Which, just a side note here, do you have a favorite video game movie?
Oh, interesting. I think I'd have to think about that a little bit longer, but
think on that one.
Yeah, I mean, like
they rarely are that good.
Correct.
I mean, their track record's pretty poor. Yeah, I can't even think of one that I really love right now. I mean, granted, Bob Hoskins' Super Mario was magnifique.
John Leguizamo is Luigi, right? Oh,
yeah, still he can do no wrong.
No, I love him.
I saw Nope yesterday. Hopefully we'll talk about that soon. But he's in the preview for the new horror film The Menu coming out, John Leguizamo.
I haven't seen that trailer.
I'm very pumped for that one. That looks like a really fun movie. Anna Taylor-Joy and John Leguizamo and Ralph Fiennes.
Oh,
so
nice.
It's gonna be a powerhouse. It should be really good. But on the Resident Evil front, I don't know. I think we tapped it. I think we sucked it dry.
I think so too.
Well, thanks for listening, friends and neighbors and zombies alike. You got any final notes?
Well, in a video game, you can always restart. You can always restart your life.
Listen to this again while you stay alive.